Dave Talks Comics, Episode 29. Heroes Con, Day 3. Dave Talks Comics is a podcast on the subjects of comic books and cartoons. I talk about the comics I have read and the cartoons I have watched. Dave Talks Comics can be found on the web at davetalkscomics.com. On Twitter, at Dave Talks Comics. Email can be sent to dave@davetalkscomics.com. On this episode, I will be talking about my experiences on the third and final day of Heroes Con 2014. You'll also get my road diaries from my trip back from Charlotte to DC. And then this episode will end with my final thoughts on Heroes Con in general and specifically this year's Heroes Con. Heroes Con Day 3. Well, I've left Heroes Con. I'm still in Charlotte, but I'm getting ready to leave, but I want to record my thoughts before I start to forget stuff. The day didn't start so good. I mentioned in my report on Day 2 that I got back to the hotel with a headache and then took a nap, woke up at 9, and then went and got something to eat. Well, I still had a headache when I woke up this morning. It wasn't as bad as it was last night, but I still had a headache. My stomach was feeling a little off. I wanted to get something to eat, but I didn't want to eat at the hotel. So I did a little Yelp searching, and I came up with a place that was within walking distance, about a block and a half from the hotel, called Tryon House Restaurant. I think that's what it's called. It's basically a diner. So I went there and I had one of their breakfast specials. I had a couple scrambled eggs, or a couple of eggs scrambled, whatever. Bacon, grits, and toast, and apple juice. And don't usually eat that kind of stuff. Sometimes, I never make that kind of stuff for myself. And sometimes my mother will make it if I'm going over to her place for a special event or something, or somebody else's for brunch or something like that. But I never make that kind of stuff for myself. And the only place I've ever had grits has been down here in North Carolina. Well, that's not entirely true, but, just grits. My mother makes it with cheese, but this is just grits. But it was good. It was good food. It wasn't, fantastic 5-star meal, but it was good, solid meal, and it was right near. I should have gone there the previous couple of days for breakfast, honestly. So I got back from there. I still wasn't feeling great, but I packed up my stuff. I went to the show. Still feeling kind of woozy, a little bit of a headache. Stomach was feeling a little off. I definitely needed something to eat, so I went to Einstein Bagels and I got a bagel, although then I only ended up eating a quarter of it and just put the rest away in my bag. Still wasn't feeling great. Went down, I walked the showroom floor. By that time it was open. I was taking some advice from one of the Tomorrow's guys who had asked. I was looking for an original art dealer, and I only found one on the whole floor, which kind of surprised me. And I talked to one of his people, and I got a postcard from them, which has their contact information. And I I had walked through all of the dealer areas, you know, the retailers, the toy sellers, the comic book retailers, all of that stuff. And at that point, it was probably about noon. Yeah, it was around noon, I think, or maybe just after noon. And I sat down along the wall near the entrance to the show floor. And there were some seats there, but I decided to sit on the floor, crossed my legs. I pulled out the program guide, and I just kind of sat there like I was reading, but I was really just meditating. And my head would kind of slump down a little bit. And I probably sat there with my eyes kind of flittering open and closed for a while. Nobody came up to disturb me. Nobody, well, not intentionally. I mean, there were some kids crying occasionally, but I probably sat there for a half hour or so just with my eyes kind of nodding in and out of consciousness, and I don't know, that seemed to help. I eventually was able to sit up and just watch people go by, and I sat there till about 1 o'clock, and for some reason my headache was gone, and I was feeling a lot better. I had a little bit to eat. I'm still nibbling at that bagel. I still haven't finished that bagel yet, and it's past 4:30 at this point. It's getting close to 5. So after that, I went to the art auction. There was an art auction on Saturday night, but there's also an art auction for the remaining items on Sunday. Actually, there's 3 auctions. They have one at 1, one at 2, and one at 3. So I went to the first one. There's a couple pieces that interested me, but I really didn't want to spend the money. The one that intrigued me the most was the Tom Fowler piece, which I didn't realize it was Tom Fowler, although now that I know that it is, I'm pretty sure I've seen it before. It was a watercolor of The Thing from the Fantastic Four. It was a really nice piece. I think it went for $100, which is a very good price for a Tom Fowler piece. But I just didn't feel like trying to outbid the guy who bid $100. Let's see. After that, I went to... Okay, so after that, it was about 1:30 when that wrapped up. Then I went up to the inking panel, which was run by Terrence and Brandon. Brandon Paget? I think so. Terrence Hoskins and Brandon Paget, I believe. I believe those are their names. Definitely from the Dollar Bin crew. And it was an interesting panel, you know, and honestly, they got very technical, and there were some things that were just going over my head, but I didn't want to stop to ask questions. I was enjoying it. If nothing else, it gave me a real appreciation for how much these guys put into their work and how much thought they give. Let's see if I can find my program guide, and then maybe I can give you the names of the people who were on the panel, or maybe I could just put that in the addendum. No, wait, here is the program guide. Yes, here's the program guide. So let's see, the inking panel. The inking panel on Sunday at 1:30 in room 201. And there was more than this on the panel, and I honestly did not recognize anybody other than the 2 hosts based on their faces. The Dexter Vines and Carl Story and Tim Townsend, and there was 2 other inkers on the panel. It was not very well attended. There was maybe a couple dozen people there at most, I'd say a dozen and a half, 15, 20 people there. Listening to them talk about things like what kind of brush they use and inks and paper and what they like about this or about that and what they like about inking. And I missed the first 15 minutes probably. I got up there about 1:45. It started at 1:30. They talked about, they certainly talked about brushes, and they talked about nibs, and I'm still unclear on what a nib is. They talked about erasing the pencils. They talked about the difference between inking over actual pencils and inking over blue line, which would be a printout of the pencils in blue. And they told some stories about, although they didn't name names, they talked about working for DC and for Marvel. There was some mention about how DC was using some really crappy paper at one point and how that really impacted their work. And I mean, through all of this, it came to mind that they really are kind of, they don't get the sort of appreciation. And it's not because they were complaining about it, but just because of the way they were talking about things. It sounds like they have to make do with what they're given, as opposed to being asked what they want and what they need. And I'm sure other people in the process, colorists, letterers, pencilers, etc., get the same sort of treatment, but this was an inking panel, so that's what I experienced. So it was very interesting. It was the first time I'd gone to an inking panel, so it makes me want to learn more about inking. I don't know if I could ever do it, but I'm not terribly artistically inclined when it comes to the visual, but it certainly makes me more interested in learning more about inking and going to more panels and hearing more things. And the other things I thought about was on Sidebar, the podcast from the three guys from Atlanta, Swain, Dwight, and Adrian. They often have artists on there. In fact, it's almost entirely artists that they have on there as their guests. But they've probably had some inkers on there, but I just cannot recall, and I don't think the majority of their guests are inkers. So it makes me think that some of these guys, if I'd heard more podcasts with inkers talking about the craft, I might know more about the craft and understand more about the craft of inking. Another thing they talked about was how supplies often get changed, whether it's the brushes or the ink or the paper. How at one point it seems like as soon as they find something that works for them, a tool that works for them, whether it's any of those things I just mentioned, that it doesn't last. It seems to go away for various reasons. Some ingredient in the product gets banned, for instance, like some chemical, or they're using some animal product or something like that. So, and it ran for, I did not tape this panel, in large part because I came in late, and partly because I thought there was going to be a visual aspect to it, and I knew I wouldn't be able to capture that and tape it at the same time. So I didn't tape it. It ran for, I was in there for a good hour and a half, I think, or something like that. Let's see. So after that, I did go down to the show floor because it was getting close to 2. No, that started at 1:30. I got there at 1:45. I was probably there till 2:45 or later. So I guess I was there for about an hour, and the panel lasted about an hour and 15 minutes. So then I went downstairs to the floor. I walked around a little bit. I stopped at Indie Island. I bought a book from, let's see if I can find it now. Oh, wait, I think I put it in. Yes, I did put it in here. I got a book from Rich Tommaso, Dry County #1. This is a mini comic. And Dry County #2 is out, but I just got the first issue. All his stuff looked interesting. And then I talked to him a little bit about, well, I don't know, we didn't talk that much. I just asked for the sales pitch, and so I got that. We talked a little bit about Patrick Dean, and I told him, because Patrick Dean was just a couple tables down, and I told him about my Doctor Strange sketch. I didn't commission. I didn't have it with me because I left it in the car. So but we both agreed that he should charge more for his commissions. So after that, I walked around a little more. I wound up looking at some comic books and some trades. And probably against my better judgment, I don't know, I ended up buying a DC Archives. It was only $20. It was the third volume of the Doom Patrol. This is the classic Doom Patrol from the 1960s, done by Arnold Drake, I believe, was the writer, and Bruno Premiani was the artist, or at least the penciler. I think he did both the penciling and the inking. I'm not certain on that. And I've got volumes 1 and 2, and I've read them both, and it's probably been 2-3 years since I read volume 2. I'm not sure. But there's only 5 volumes altogether that collect their entire run of the Doom Patrol, which, interestingly enough, ends with the Doom Patrol being killed. And also, this volume, I believe, is the one where Beast Boy, Changeling, first appears, who would later go on to become a member of the new Teen Titans and was in the Teen Titans cartoon series, Teen Titans Go, and so this was his first appearances in Volume 3 of the Doom Patrol. Let's see. So that was it as far as stuff I bought. And the mini comic was $5, so I spent $25 on comic books today. Let's see. Oh, so after that, I went upstairs and I went to the journalism in comics journalism panel. Let me get this name straight. And then I want to read the names of the people who were on the panel. Comics Journalism Roundtable. And it was hosted by Tom Heinches? I'm not certain on the pronunciation. Tom Spurgeon and Heidi McDonald and Chris Sims, all of whom I was familiar with, were on the panel. And they talked about comics journalism as they see it and things that are problems with it. And I don't know if they really talked positives per se, but they talked about their work and what they do and how they approach it. And I thought it was very well done. Very interesting. And so, let's see, they talked about, their approaches to comics journalism, and they talked about their businesses, because two of them run, Heidi and Tom, have their own websites. They don't work on somebody else's. Chris Sims works for Comics Alliance, so he just provides content. Heidi mentioned that she's planning on doing starting a Patreon account for her website. Let's see, something I'm forgetting here. I taped the panel, and we'll see how that turns out. I think I got it all. I taped the panel. Let's see. What else was there? Watching some people walk past me right now. They can't seem to find their car. I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot. And they walked past me about a minute ago going in one direction. Now they just walked past me in the other direction, going the other way. So I think they're gone. I don't know if they found their car yet, though. So that panel ran about an hour and 10 minutes or something like that. I'd started at 3:30, it wound up at about 4:30. So after that, I just took off and I came back to my car. Here they are again. Or maybe they found their car, now they're headed for I think they found their car, or they're headed to another floor, to check another floor to see if their car is there. I'll try not to laugh. Let's see. So some observations about, one thing I noticed about the panels is it was interesting that the panels seemed to be focused around people more than they did around a topic. I mean, I went to the journalism panel where you had journalists, comics journalists, talking about what they do. Then I also went to the inking panel today, which had inkers talking about what they do. And yesterday I went to the indie creators panel, who were talking about what they do. And so it was more like meeting of the minds. And then there was also the 20th, I think you could even group in the 20th anniversary panel, the Tomorrow's 20th anniversary panel in that group, because they were also a group of people who do the same thing, talking about what they do. So that was interesting. And the one thing that I felt was missing, would have been nice, is if there had been a podcasting panel. It would have been nice to hear some podcasters talk about what they do. Now, I know the Dollar Bin people were busy running panels, so they couldn't do that. I don't know who would do that, but and I guess podcasting has never been a big thing. It doesn't seem to be as big down here, but and I don't think I ran into anybody today I didn't see anybody. I wonder if anybody saw me when I was sitting against the wall meditating from 11 to 12. No, 12 to 1. From 12 to 1 on the convention floor. But I didn't see anybody. I didn't really go looking or searching for anybody, but I didn't see anybody any familiar faces today. I know that there was more people down here from the 11 o'clock comics forums than I saw. There's probably something I'm forgetting that I want to say right now. Something about the show that strikes me. I already talked about the panels. I talked about the stuff I bought. I talked about what I had for breakfast. Oh, I parked in a garage. I haven't pulled out yet. It's supposed to only cost me $5 for the day. That's not bad. I'm a few blocks away. Oh, yeah. I was driving to the downtown to park, and I was in the left lane. Yes, I was in the left lane on a one-way street going north, and there was a guy stopped in the center lane, or he was going very slow, and then just as I'm passing him, he decides to make a left turn into this garage and almost hits me. I don't know what he was doing. It scared the shit. It scared me. I managed to swerve a little bit. There was no contact, but I was pretty heated. I don't know why he did that. Obviously, he wasn't looking, and I'm saying I don't know if it was a man or a woman driving the car. I couldn't see. It was a smallish car. It was a compact or a small sedan. It was not a big car. But anyway, I parked the car in a garage, so it's been nice and cool all day. It's not out in the sun. It is fairly warm out there. I did wear my flannel shirt again while I was inside, which I especially felt the need for when I was in the panel rooms. I don't have a headache. I have been eating, although not a whole lot. I only had... haven't even finished that bagel I bought. I had breakfast, and I've had a few nuts and raisins, almonds, a few almonds and raisins that I brought with me. So that's it for Heroes Con 2014. I managed to restrain myself, and I don't think I spent quite as much as I did the last time, or probably even in 2011, the time before that. So I'm going to take off. It took me about 9 hours to get here. Hopefully it'll be a little faster getting home. I'm going to make my first stop I think I'm going to stop and get a bite to eat early, because I don't know where there is a place to get a bite to eat. I'd like to stop at that Panera in Lynchburg, but I don't think I'm going to be there by 8 o'clock, because it's probably a little after 5 at this point. I think it's going to take me more than 3 hours to get there. And this is, I guess, partly my own fault also for staying as late as I did. But I wanted to. I should probably be home, I don't know, 1, 2 in the morning, something like that. And of course, I got plenty of podcasts on my my tablet to listen to. So I'll probably record a little more. There's probably some stuff I forgot or some more things to think about to worth mentioning. And I'll probably record a little bit more either on the road if something occurs to me, or once I get home, or I'll probably tomorrow sometime. I'm not working tomorrow. I'm taking the day off. So, for the final time, that's it from Charlotte, North Carolina for Heroes Con 2014. Heroes Con Road Trip Part 2. Rest stop number 1. I stopped a little earlier than I usually do because it seemed like the best place to grab a bite to eat. I'm in Salisbury, North Carolina at a Panera. Yes, another Panera. I've just had a chicken Napa almond chicken salad sandwich. And getting ready to take off. It's going to be, I've started to listen to, I'm listening to Indie Comic Book Noise. I'm probably 3/4 of the way through that episode. Let's see, I left at 5:30 from Charlotte. It's probably going to be 2 in the morning before I get home. I'm just guessing. It may be more like 1 or 1:30. But if it takes me under 8 hours, I'll be very surprised. I've been here for over 22 minutes right now. Next stop isn't going to be until Danville, Virginia. I think that's about it. I'm not sure what I'm going to listen to next. But maybe I should plan it out since I'm winding down on this episode of Indie Comic Book Noise. Let's see. Well, if I want to go with something that's not comic book related, maybe Q&A from C-SPAN. Yeah. I think I'll go with that. And then I'll go back and I'll listen to Crankcast. Yeah. From last week's episode of Crankcast, not the current week's, because I'm not far behind. Yep. I think that's about it. It's pretty warm out here. I got plenty of water once again, and I should get on the road instead of babbling on. Heroes Con Road Trip Part 2, stop number 2. I'm in just outside of Danville, Virginia. I've driven about 100 miles, maybe 99 miles since I last stopped. Been on the road for almost 2 hours and 50 minutes, about over 2 hours and 45 minutes now. So far so good, not too bad. Sun's going down. It's nowhere near as hot as it was on the drive down to Charlotte. Just stopped to use the bathroom and getting ready to move on. I finished up that episode of Indie Comic Book Noise. And now I am listening to Word Balloon. I'm listening to John Suncher's talking to Jonathan Hickman, which is an interesting interview because I think Jonathan Hickman's coming, and I think this isn't the first time, but he's been starting to come clean on some of the things that it seemed to me like he was holding stuff back or he was being very defensive a few years ago about. And I think that was just him, because he was adjusting to the situation at Marvel and learning how to deal with it there. Because I believe his first books were for Image, was The Nightly News, which I have read, and Pax Romana, which I've also read. I have not read, I don't think, any of his stuff for Marvel, but that's not too surprising since I don't read a whole lot of current stuff, and nothing really not much from the last 5 years has really caught my interest from the big two. So it's an interesting interview. I'm not sure. I'm about an hour and 10 minutes into it. I'm not sure how much longer it goes on for, but after that, there's another interview in that word balloon, but I think I'll move on to something else, and I'll come back to word balloon at some point in the future. Probably not on this drive. Maybe I'll listen to Crankcast next, or iFanboy. Those are also right near the top of the list. Things to listen to, and I got plenty of stuff to listen to. I also got plenty of interview podcasts and other kinds of podcasts. A couple of music podcasts. 1, 2, 3, 4 interview podcasts. 1, 2, 3. Wait, 1, 2, 3. 3 more comic book podcasts. Well, 4 if you count that. Yeah, I should probably listen to an interview podcast. Although the next one is it's Girl on Guy. Okay, well, I'm going to get back on the road. Next stop is going to be a Sheetz in Lynchburg, Virginia. So, that's it for now. Heroes Con Road Trip, Part 2, rest stop number 3. Or number 4. I'm just north of Charlottesville, Virginia, a town called Ruckersville. I'm at a Sheetz gas station. Stopped here and used the bathroom. My original plan was to stop in Lynchburg next after Danville. But I had a little run-in with the police. Got pulled over by a cop probably 20 miles out of Danville, because I was riding with my earbuds in. Issued me a ticket. I don't know how much it's for. He didn't say. So, that sucks. But, so that's that. Let's see. Yeah. So instead of stopping in Lynchburg, I decided to help my time. I'd just keep going. And I'm at about 285 miles, which means I almost doubled my distance since Danville. So I've got probably about 120 miles to go till I get home. I'll probably make one more stop, probably somewhere Bealton, Opal, Centerville, someplace like that. Another Sheetz gas station. I need to check on that. I also need to get gas here probably before I go. I've been here about 12 minutes now. Well, I continue to listen, sometimes with both earbuds in, sometimes not, but I finished off that part of Word Balloon with the interview with Jonathan Hickman, and then I listened to all of Girl on Guy, Aisha Tyler, and there's some video game developer, somebody, Hay. Can't remember his first name, though. Hay was the last name, though. I think he works for Ubisoft or something like that. Because she does some promotional work with them. So I've been on the road for about 5.5 hours now. It's about 11:15. I probably got at least 2 more hours of driving to go. Not counting the next stop. Since 120 miles, yeah. Have to slow down at some point, but... So I'm going to check and see where that Sheetz is in Centerville. I'm going to get some gas, and then I think I'm going to take off. And, thinking about that cop, the stupid thing is that quite often if I see cops, I will, speaking of which, there goes one right past me right now. Pulling somebody over, I think. Normally if I got the earbuds in, I will pull them out. I don't know why I didn't tonight. Honestly, I do not. I will usually pull the earbuds out. For some reason, I didn't. And he went past me. And I was doing the speed limit. I was doing 65 and a 65. And then he slowed down and I went past him. And I was still doing less than the speed limit. And of course, then he got behind me and pulled me over. So, I don't know. I should have known better. I should have, and I'd seen a few cops. I've seen one or two cases where cops had pulled people over, Virginia State Police. And at least one instance where there was a cop sitting on the side of the road. I don't know. I just wasn't thinking. And I don't think my brain was that fuzzy or anything. Just a brain fart, that's all. So, hopefully the fine isn't too big. Because I don't know how I can argue my way out of this. But anyway, that's it for this rest stop. Got to get gas, got to figure out where the next one's going to be, and I got to get going. Heroes Con Road Trip Part 2, stop number 4. Okay, I'm in Centerville, I think. I'm off Centerville Road in Virginia. And last stop before home, I don't know, I got probably 50 miles to go. Didn't think it would take me an hour and a half to get here from my last stop. I listened to the second half of Word Balloon. Interview with, I can't remember the artist's name. Had a bit of trouble staying awake during that. It was a little scary there for a bit. Not that I almost ran off the road or anything, but I had a couple moments where I had to start slapping myself in the face to stay awake. But eventually it passed, and my head is clear now, so. And it was for the last, 20 miles, 25 miles before I got here. So for the most part, I'm almost home. I think if I do this again, I'm not going to leave quite so late. When I do this again, I mean go to Heroes Con. If I go to Heroes Con next year, or the next time I go, I don't think I'm going to stay, leave at 5:30 like I did this time. I think that was a mistake. Yeah. I think that was a mistake. It's about 1 o'clock now? Yep, it's just 1 o'clock. Let's see, I've been on the road for about 7 hours? 7 hours and 20 minutes. No, it's about 7.5 hours. And I probably got a good another hour to go before I get home. So, at least 50 minutes. That depends on what kind of pace I can make. But sooner I leave here, the sooner I can get home, and sooner I can get to bed. So, I'm nowhere near as exhausted as I was towards the end of my Appleseed Con road trip, but still, it's late. It's just about as late. I'm ready to hit the sack, so I gotta go. Heroes Con Road Trip Part 2 has ended. I am in front of my building, getting my stuff together. Let's see, the trip took me a total of about 8 hours and 15 minutes, which is about 45 minutes shorter than the trip down to Charlotte. But I think a lot of that had to do with the traffic in the DC area and other places too, Charlottesville and possibly to a degree even Charlotte. because it was so late, there was considerably less traffic on the road. I'm nowhere near as tired as I was after the Appleseed road trip, but still, it's late. It's almost 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm ready to get some sleep. I just want to get my stuff inside, and I'll probably leave the rest for anything else for tomorrow or today, since it is after midnight. Yeah, no further thoughts really. Let me see. No, other than, once again, I should probably try taking 95. I don't think it would have made a huge difference on the way home. It might have made a difference on the way out. I don't know. 95 can be a hassle too sometimes. But I haven't tried taking 95 south in quite some time, so maybe it's worth a shot. Or south further than about. Well, certainly not as far as Richmond, but yeah. Okay, that's it for this. I'll probably record a little more tomorrow. Okay, I think it's time for some final thoughts on HeroesCon 2014. I've made some notes, and I'm going to try and go through them. First off, I can't help but compare this show to the 2 previous years that I went, 2011 and 2012. It definitely felt like a different show this year. My understanding is that last year was the year that they expanded the showroom floor. I think they doubled the space. Wouldn't surprise me if that's the case, because it felt huge, and I think I said as much in some of the previous recordings. It just felt enormous, and there was these big wide open spaces, and to a degree I think the show didn't feel quite as intimate as it did in previous years, and certainly in 2011 and 2012. It wasn't, I don't know, it just felt like everything's much more spaced out, and I think that's kind of to the detriment of the show in some ways. In other ways, it's good because it did give people more room, especially things like cosplayers, more room to play around and for pictures and things like that in the same space that the dealers and the artists were. So they did not have to leave the showroom floor in order to avoid getting in other people's way. But at the same time, everything just felt, I don't know, it felt a little too open, a little too widely spaced. Maybe it's just, in my case, that I wasn't ready for that, or that it wasn't my previous experience. So that's one thought. Let's see, what else? I just finished listening to a podcast. There's a number of podcasts that have already been put out there. Other people talking about their experiences at HeroesCon this year. 11 O'Clock Comics, Nerdy 30s, Comic Geek Speak, all have at least some sort of coverage of HeroesCon, talking about what their experiences were like at the show, what they did at the show, and definitely, I think all of them were different from mine. I think all of them spent considerably more time on the showroom floor than I did, and less time at panels. And also, I should point out that the Dollar Bin has released, at least as I record this, has released the first panel that they recorded, which was the Indie Creators panel, which was one that I talked about on episode 28. This was from the second day of Heroes Con, because I was there at that panel, and I thought it was a good panel. I haven't listened to the recording yet, but I'm sure it came out great. One thing I like to look back at when I'm looking back at a show is, what did I get? What did I come home with? How much did I spend? I'm a numbers kind of guy, and so that's how I like to look at things. I didn't spend anywhere near as much as I have in the past at Heroes Con. I only spent about $215 on art this year. I came home with 7 pieces, of which I am, some of which I love, some of which I'm like, okay, that's nice. I'd say for the most part, I'd say 3/4 of them I love. 3/4 of them I am very happy with. There's really only one piece that I'm a little disappointed in. And as always, it's a bit of a crapshoot when you are buying art. I mean, you get to know some of these artists, especially when you're buying art from artists that you have not bought them from before. You get to, if you're buying art from the same artist as you have before, sometimes there's a relationship there. You get to at least know what they're going to put into it. Some artists will put in a background, some will not, unless you pay for it. Some will, add shading, add colors. Others won't, once again, unless you pay for it. It varies, But, I don't think that you can, I don't expect to be extremely happy with every single piece of art that I buy, every single commission that I get. I recognize that it's bound. It's just like taking photographs. And you take photographs, in fact, even probably worse when you're taking photographs. You take 10 photographs for one good one, or whatever the case may be. That's the way I feel it is. You take a lot of, and it's in the same way here. You get a certain number of, and this is part of the reason why I have gotten to be a little tight with my money as far as the commissions go. The most I paid, there was 2 of them that I paid $50 for, and I'm very happy with both of them. I think they're great. But the one that I paid the least for was not my least favorite. So it was one of those in the middle range. Anyway. Okay, so that was the art. And I've posted pictures of all that, and I think I will post a link to the album of photographs. I've taken pictures of all of the books that I bought, and that's what I'm going to talk about now. I came home with, about 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 10 books. A couple of them were given to me, I didn't buy, Doberman and Maps. And I think the most expensive book I bought was the Doom Patrol Archives, which was $20, but that's still, considering I think the cover price is $50. That's and it's brand new, still in the plastic. I think that's a great price. So altogether I spent a little under $50 for all of these books, and that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Next thing to think about is what are my plans for next year? Am I going to go back next year? And the fact that I'm even framing it that way should tell you that I'm not sure. I wouldn't say that I'm not going to go back. I don't, but I think I have to evaluate and see what's out there. There are other shows I would like to go to. This is an 8 to 9 hour drive for me, and it's at a time of year when it's extremely hot. I suppose I could take the plane down, but then that's even more cost. I think as far as costs go, I think I did a good job with picking a hotel. It wasn't a great hotel, but the location was good. It was easy to get to the downtown from where I was staying. And I didn't have any trouble on the third day. I didn't have any trouble finding a parking garage in which to park, which wasn't too far away from the convention center. I only paid $5 to park, so that was very reasonable for the day. But there are other shows I'd like to go to. In fact, when I was listening to the Comic Geek Speak episode, they were talking about more than just Heroes Con. They were also talked about, there was another show that weekend, the Wizard World Philadelphia or something like that. And there was a few other shows they were talking about. They were also talking about their 50th anniversary. Now, in the past, they've had they've done their own convention, which they call Super Show, and they've done at least 3 or 4 of those so far. I've gone to the last 3. I went in 2011, 2012. No, wait. 2010, 2011. They didn't have it in 2012. Then I went in 2013, yes. And they didn't have it this year. And the way they were talking about it on that episode of CGS, I don't know if they're going to have it next year or when they're ever going to have it again. So you may want to give that episode a listen if that's something that interests you. So, the other show that interests me, or the other town that interests me that I think I'd like to go to that I've never been to, is Toronto. At least on the East Coast or the eastern part of North America. That's the town I'd like to. And there's a number of shows in Toronto. There's TCAF, Toronto Comic Arts Festival, I believe, and there's. What's the other one? Fan Expo Canada, I think, which usually falls right about the same time. I think either the weekend before. I think it's usually the weekend before, or maybe the same weekend as the Baltimore Comic Con. And for that reason, I don't know that, and the fact that it's a much bigger show. I don't know if I will ever go to Fan Expo, but TCAF interests me, and I think they do other Comic Cons in Toronto at other times of the year. In fact, I was planning to go to one of them, not this year, but last year, but then the situation at work got in the way, and so I ended up canceling that trip. So, I'm not sure if I'm going back to Heroes Con next year. It's a fun show. There's lots of great deals to be had if you're interested in buying books, toys, etc. Although I didn't buy any toys, so I can't really vouch for the prices on the toys. And there's tons of artists there. I guess I was just a little turned off by it. It just wasn't the show that I remember it as being. And I don't know. And I have kind of scaled back on how much I'm spending. I'm trying not to just. It can be fun to just throw money around. But at the end of the day, you come home with all this stuff, and what are you going to do with it? I mean, I've got books from cons from years ago that I have yet to pick up, yet to read. And so I'm really trying to control myself in that regard. There's nothing wrong with buying some books, and buying art, but it just seems like I'm trying to keep it within reason. So at the beginning, I believe in episode 26, I was talking about I was a little, well, I don't know if I said cynical or skeptical or kind of holding back as far as waiting for this show to let it impress me, and I'm not sure if I put it exactly that way, but that's how I'm putting it now. I didn't go in with high expectations that this was going to be a great show, and unfortunately, I guess what I'm saying right now is I don't think it was a great show. It was a good show. And I came home with some really nice stuff, and I got to go to some really great panels, and it gave me a chance to go out of town. The food I had to eat wasn't quite what I've had in prior years, and that may have contributed in part. And of course, there's things outside of the show that the show had nothing to do with, which contributed in part, I guess, to my overall experience, like getting a headache on Saturday afternoon, evening, and then still feeling a little sick Sunday morning, and then getting a ticket on the way home. So I'm not sad I went. I'm not disappointed in the show. It was a good show. It was worth going. I think I enjoyed myself. It just wasn't quite what I remembered, or it wasn't quite the same show that I experienced a couple years ago. So I think that's going to do it. So I encourage you to listen to other people's coverage. 11 O'Clock Comics, Nerdy 30s, Comic Geek Speak. Certainly listen to the Dollar Bin because they've got all those podcasts, all those panels that they recorded. They've released just the one so far, but I'm sure they recorded at least 3 or 4 of them, possibly more. And so don't just rely on my opinion of the show. That's it for episode 29 of Dave Talks Comics. Questions or comments can be posted on the episode page at davetalkscomics.com or tweet them to @DaveTalksComics. You can email your questions or comments to dave@davetalkscomics.com, or you can just reply in whichever forum you found this posted. Next time on Dave Talks Comics, I will be presenting my recording of the Conan panel from the second day of HeroesCon.